Okay, we are here today to discuss one of my favorite characters from The White Lotus season 3, and that is Chelsea. No last name, as far as I know.
Chelsea's the best. Hi, I'm Jonathan Gold. I am an expert in Buddhism at Princeton University.
And I'm Rachel Carbonara. I'm an expert on spirituality at Princeton University. And we're here to share our thoughts about The White Lotus season 3. All right, let's get into Chelsea. And let me tell you why I wanted to make a video that was just an ode to Chelsea. I think Chelsea is doing something rare in this series, which is bringing positive representation to people who are spiritual but not religious or new agey. And as someone who studies that, I appreciate it.
Scorpio. So secretive. It's not easy for me, Rick. I'm an Aries. I need everything out in the open. The laws of the universe. How we're all connected. You know, I think the cosmos brought us together so that we could get to the root of your issues.
She's certainly the most new agey character in the show. She's also maybe the most likable character in the show. Certainly one of the most likable.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that the, writers for TV tend to sort of take an easy laugh when they depict New Age. And Chelsea isn't, she does, and actually a lot of the stuff in the show is a little bit thin, tinsel-y kind of New Age stuff. But she's a little bit more substantial, and that's very rare.
It's rare in a media portrayal. It's not super rare in real life.
Right. Yeah. That's what I mean.
Chelsea's principles throughout the series are primarily illustrated through her devotion to her boyfriend Rick and her dismissal of Saxon. She sees her relationship with Rick as something that is deeply spiritual in nature. And with Saxon, she can't be bothered because she sees him as very shallow and lacking in any sort of spiritual depth.
I just don't understand why you wouldn't hook up with me.
Because I have a boyfriend.
Whatever.
And he's my soulmate.
What does that even mean?
Once you've connected with someone on a spiritual level, you can't go back to cheap sex. Hooking up with you would be an empty experience.
And how would you know that?
Because I know. Because you're soulless.
Throughout the course of the show, Saxon starts to become bothered by the fact that Chelsea sees him as this shallow, soulless person, and he starts to say that he's interested in learning more about being spiritual from her.
You know you have the wrong impression of me, right?
Do I?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not just one thing. I mean, I could be somebody else if I wanted.
Well, then I think you should.
I mean, I bet I could even connect with you on a spiritual level since that's so important to you. Why? No, try me. No, teach me your ways.
So Chelsea becomes a sort of spiritual mentor for him, and we get the sense at the end of the season that through his encounter with Chelsea, Saxon has become a better person who is less shallow and a bit more spiritual.
So tell me some of the things that you're seeing that Chelsea is doing in the show that, really shows her to have a deep affiliation with this identity of New Age spirituality. And then, what do you think that says about her and her character?
I guess I should say first, I'm describing Chelsea as New Agey. She probably wouldn't describe herself that way. Let me say what New Age means. It basically is a reference to a spiritual movement that became popular in the 1970s, 1980s. And the term New Age comes from the fact that a lot of people who were part of this spiritual movement believed that the world was entering like a new epoch. And
Oh, great.
entering this new world age was either thought to be about all of humanity collectively raising their consciousness to a higher level, and that's what was shifting us into a new age, and or the idea that we were moving astrologically into a new age from the age of Pisces to the age of Aquarius.
Oh
So
yeah. That's
this
like
is where
Hair.
what?
The movie Hair has a song
Yeah,
about
the
that.
age of
Yeah.
Aquarius. Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe we probably can't play that.
We can
Uh,
just sing it.
we'll sing it ourselves. I don't remember how the song goes. I do remember seeing the music video of it. Here's what I want to say. I think that Chelsea would not describe herself as New Age because people almost never self-describe as New Age. I personally would say that I'm a New Agey person. Most people wouldn't because usually New Age is seen as sort of a negative term. And also in some ways the term New Age is really linked to that time period of the 1970s. And so things happening in the 21st century that are similar, when you say New Age, it kind of brings it back to that time period. So the broader term I would use is spiritual but not religious.
Mhm.
I kind of use spiritual but not religious and New Agey as interchangeable. Um, but I will say one more thing about that. I guess I don't need to harp on the definition of New Age too much, although I could. But one thing I will say, even though I don't think that most people who were part of the New Age movement really believed in this idea of the coming age of Aquarius. However, I think the idea behind the shift from the age of Pisces to the age of Aquarius is very indicative in terms of a cultural shift that New Age people saw happening. So whether they believe that this was astrologically determined or not, the way that people talk about the shift from the age of Pisces to the age of Aquarius has a lot to do with religion. So the astrological age is considered to be 2,000 something years long, right? So basically, the previous astrological age, age of Pisces, would have started around the time of Christ. And so the whole concept basically is that the world is shifting from traditional religion and traditional religious authorities to a new type of world in which spirituality is democratized, right? And in which we don't have these old institutions. Instead, we have people relying on their own inner guidance, their intuition, people seeking out spiritual knowledge for themselves. So that idea of a shift that would happen from traditional religion to being spiritual but not religious in the age of Aquarius, even if people didn't believe in the age of Aquarius, that's kind of the defining thing of the new age, is being spiritual but not religious.
I just want to point out that it seems to me like the whole Trump and QAnon thing, which are two different things, is a way of the Christian right kind of both reacting to this perceived change in culture. I think that actually there is a perception, there's a shared perception among people on the left who have this kind of optimistic idea that now we're no longer going back to the domination of these other religions, and people on the right who see a more idealized understanding of the past as slipping away. There's a shared understanding that something has changed and our culture is not going back. And the QAnon and also Christian right and Trump, they all think that we should go back to something else, to a more traditional form of religion.
Well, it's a shared perception that's rooted in reality to a certain extent, because for the past several decades, Christianity has been steadily declining in the United States, and the identity of spiritual but not religious has been rising. That has kind of changed. The most recent results from Pew Research just came out a couple of months ago and show that Christianity is actually now leveling off, whereas for decades it had been steadily declining. So that might actually be changing. I don't know yet. Can't predict the future, but that could be changing. But there is some truth to the fact that despite the continued dominance of Christianity in our culture, it has been declining, and spiritual but not religious identities have been rising.
In the Enneagram, I'm a 9. I'm easygoing. peacemaker. But it also means I'm quite complacent, which isn't always good. Hey, you're probably a 2. I'm your soulmate, Rick.
How can you be my soulmate? Our signs aren't even compatible.
She's talking about the idea of a soulmate. She's talking about astrology, like the idea of being an Aries. She's talking about enneagrams. Are those things sort of related? Do they make a kind of coherent perspective from your view?
I think it's very typical that someone would be interested in astrology and the Enneagram and the idea of soulmates. All of these things are in many ways very New Agey, but of course, a lot of the developments that happened with New Age spirituality were new ways of interpreting older things. So astrology, for example, is very old and something that's practiced and understood very differently in different cultures around the world. But I would say it's very typical for a spiritual but not religious person to be interested in what's my Enneagram type. The Enneagram says that there are 9 different types of personalities that are all rooted in a different core fear. And that's a way of understanding yourself and understanding the world around you, understanding the people you're in relationship with. And I think for modern people, astrology is often functioning the same way. It's a tool for self-understanding, as well as for understanding other people. So seeing someone else's chart, seeing if you're compatible or not. There's a point where Rick says, how can I be your soulmate? Our signs aren't even compatible, right? So there's an idea that astrology can tell you about compatibility. And so I think all of these sorts of systems of self-identification and of identifying people as certain types are ways that spiritual but not religious people are looking for some sort of roadmap or guidance about who they are, who they're supposed to be, what they're supposed to do in life, and also how to understand the relationships that they're in and the other people around them. And so there's these different systems that people are drawn to. There's the Enneagram, there's astrology. I know a lot of people are into something called human design. There will probably be a lot of other frameworks that get created around similar ideas that we can discover who we really are and what we're meant to do in this life and who our loved ones are and why they're different from us. It's a way of making sense of the world. And then the concept of a soulmate is very popular in New Age or spiritual spaces. Sometimes you'll hear the term twin flame, which is similar to a soulmate. And so basically the idea of a soulmate is that a soul was actually divided in 2. And so this person literally is the other half of your soul. And that you are seeking each other out across different lifetimes. You've probably lived different lifetimes together. And then sometimes when people talk about soulmate or twin flame, they're talking about something where maybe it's not just about romantic love, but that person is really meant to come into your life because you're meant to help each other grow. You have a purpose in each other's life.
First day we met, he told me his whole life story, and I just knew we were meant to be together.
And we really see that narrative happening with how Chelsea understands her relationship with Rick. She talks about, the fate and them being intertwined in a cosmic battle between, I think she says, hope and pain.
It's like we're in this yin and yang battle, and I'm hope, and Rick is pain, and eventually one of us will win.
And so she's definitely working within this kind of twin flame framework of, I think she even says at one point, the cosmos brought us together so that I could help you heal your pain. So that's a very typical view of a twin flame.
And it seems the thing that's, I think, really appealing about her in the show is that she uses these tools in a way that is allowing her to see things that are obvious to the viewer that the other characters wouldn't necessarily see. She's able to, just think that certain things are weird and stupid and is not taken in by them because she has a very kind of clear sense of how she goes about making her judgments.
One of the important aspects of New Age spirituality, but the sort of spiritual but not religious phenomenon more broadly, is this idea of perennialism. And I think that might be important to just note because perennialism is the idea there's like a shared spiritual wisdom, shared spiritual truth of all religions, and that every religion is communicating this truth in its own set of symbols. So it's communicated differently, but it's ultimately talking about the same thing. And that's really central to modern spirituality. And so we'll see things like Chelsea at one point is sitting by the pool. She's reading a Rumi book, right? And so Rumi is, I think, maybe 13th century Islamic poet. She's also reading books at other points by Pema Chodron, who's an American Buddhist nun. It's very characteristic
Mhm.
of modern spirituality to be drawing beliefs, practices, insights, books, things you're reading from what we might consider to be different religious traditions.
I think that's really interesting and an important thing. And it's one of the ways that spiritual but not religious and also New Age are allied with the study of religion as a discipline. They kind of reflect each other. When I tell people that I'm a scholar of religion, for the most part, people don't have any idea what that means. But if they do have an idea, it's often, oh, they think I'm kind of spiritual but not religious. I'm kind of pursuing, truths through the study of religion, and they kind of want to know, like, well, what's the right answer here?
I think historically there's a link between perennialism and the comparative study of religion, but we don't really do the comparative study of religion anymore.
Yeah, I mean, we're not moving forward very much these days in the project of trying to understand what's the same about all religion, or some kind of idea that there might be one truth that undergirds all the religions or something like that. That's no longer a very respectable project, but it is something that still exists and still something that philosophers of religion are still pursuing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I have one more comment I'm thinking, which is that within perennialism, what you're usually seeing is that people are trying to pull together specific aspects of the world's religions, which are usually aspects that are considered mystical or esoteric or occult or maybe Gnostic. So things that on some level, this is a massive oversimplification, but things that on some level feel more like magic than
Hmm.
like the social institution part of religion.
Right. And this is a major theme in the spiritual but not religious, is they want to separate out the magic and the power from the institutions and from culture and from politics.
She talks to Saxon a lot about a particular teacher. She's given him books and she's saying she'll change your life. If you zoom in, the books that Saxon's reading are two different books by Pema Chodron.
Oh.
I don't think that, and I've heard that Mike White, really likes Pema Chodron, but I don't think that Chelsea is meant to be talking about Pema Chodron. I think those are just the books they use, because when she talks to Saxon on the beach and he's like, oh, I like the parts about sex. And she's like, well, what about the part when she talks about, souls that are intertwined in these groups? And I don't think that either the sex thing or the soul family concept, which is a concept I've heard very often in New Age spirituality, kind of similar to soulmate, but there's a bigger group of people you're intertwined with through different lifetimes. I don't think either of those things are things that Pema Chodron talks about. So I don't think that is actually meant to be the person she's talking about. I think she's meant to be referring to some kind of unnamed, generic, New Age spiritual thinker. But it certainly has a positive impact on Saxon and makes him potentially a deeper, more thoughtful person.
Yeah.
All right, so we talked about how many types of people love to hate on the spiritual but not religious, the New Agey type of person. And I do think there are good reasons to be critical of modern spirituality, New Agey spirituality. These are the main critiques that I see. I would say there's at least 4 main critiques that come up over and over again. The first one is about spiritual people engaging in cultural appropriation. The framework of perennialism leads to spiritual people crafting their own spiritual belief system by drawing things from different traditions. Is that always appropriation? No, but can it be? Yes. We could do a whole other episode on cultural appropriation. I think it's way too much to get into here, but it can be appropriation. It can also be, you could also call it eclecticism or syncretism or a number of other terms.
Can I just say something like when I think about what's wrong with cultural appropriation, it's what you have to think about what the harm is,
Right.
and who's being harmed by it, and definitely the exoticization of another culture and trivialization of another culture, and also the use of someone's symbols in a way that disempowers those symbols for those people. I think is a very real problem. But if you're talking about the appropriation of like ancient Egyptian symbols or something, it's hard to know who actually is suffering from that.
hmm I think really understanding cultural appropriation requires people to really pay attention to their position in the world, the networks that they're a part of, the relationships that they're a part of, the nature of those relationships, right? It's not easy to just give a simple definition of what cultural appropriation is. Many people, of course, have given definitions of what it is, but I do think to really genuinely sufficiently attend to issues of cultural appropriation, you have to really pay attention to your your position and the specificities of different relationships between different cultures and all of these things. The second one is about modern spirituality being very commercialized or commodified. The third one is that it's very individualistic and self-centered, not really focused on helping others in the ways that other religious traditions might be more focused on the other. It's very focused on the self. The final critique that I often see is that modern spirituality or being spiritual but not religious is sort of shallow, that these people are approaching the religious in a way that is really lacking in any depth or commitment. It's just kind of frivolous, surface level. And this is the critique that I really just don't agree with. The others, I think, that's a really important thing to consider. It's usually overgeneralizing and reductive, but they're important to consider. But this one I just don't find very legitimate at all. The critique that being spiritual but not religious is kind of shallow. And so there's this idea like, oh, there's no depth or commitment there because they're just kind of like doing whatever. They're plucking from here and there rather than committing to a tradition. They're picking from a set of beliefs and practices and writings that have to do with sort of mystical views of religion. And those are coming from different traditions that in the world religions model, we would identify as distinct traditions. But also the thing I take issue with is that it is the idea that other people who are committed to one religious tradition are serious about it.
Oh yeah.
Chelsea is someone whose spiritual belief system of spiritual practice involves much more commitment and depth than the Ratliff's Christianity.
Okay, well, you call yourself a Christian, but you weren't born in Bethlehem.
Well, everyone I know is a Christian. My parents were Christians. Your parents are Christians.
Why is she so bothered? It's not like y'all ever raised us to be big Christians.
And so I think in an abstract sense, if you're just sort of seeing things going on in the culture around being spiritual but not religious, it's very easy to say that's kind of silly. Being a Christian is something serious. But then when you see actual people living out these identities, there's a whole range in any religious tradition, from people who are really taking it seriously and are very committed to it, and it's something deep for them, and people who, I remember when I was growing up, because lived in Massachusetts, everyone was Catholic, and none of my friends went to church, but they all would do the different rites, like the first communion and the confirmation, and then they would just come into school and talk about how much money they got for their confirmation.
Yeah.
So they're Catholic, but they're not. I was the only one going to church of people I knew,
It's a really good point.
Yeah.
Because I think that the spiritual but not religious requires you to be on a spiritual quest. And, even Buddhists who, we think of as like meditators in the caves, like I was saying, they, for the most part, are just giving donations on the particular days and showing up to the temple when they're expected, listening to teachings, and then just trying to be good in general. They're not on the path of spending all their time trying to achieve whatever the goals are of the religion. And the spiritual but not religious identity kind of requires you don't have to do it, right? People can do it in a very light way, but it kind of requires you to constantly be on the lookout for what you think is right.